many of our staff who are here, and including me, went through the same journey and are still going through it. We've all have parents or relatives, and it's been quite a complex process. So when I heard about Barbara McVicker, who's seated up here, and that she travels all around the country talking to people about how to create a plan, she lived the experience herself as well. She took care of her parents for 10 years, and she walked all the way through the process and system, and then had such a passion for educating people that she made it into a business. So I feel really fortunate she lives here in Columbus, that we could invite her down to our community. A little bit about Barbara. She is the author of 3 books, and some of you will have one of her 3 books. Many of you will have her book in your packet, your gift bag. Her books are Stuck in the Middle, and she was featured in the Wall Street Journal, Business First, CNN, NPR. So she's been really getting around and getting the word out, but she has 3 award-winning books. She will be selling some afterwards if you don't already have one. She also has a husband who's called Dr. McVicker, and he is a heart surgeon, so he came and spoke to Willow Brook recently, and that was cool. And she says she loves to scuba dive, and she's an aspiring pilot. So how can we keep up with Barbara? I just don't know. But I'm going to just have Barbara come on up and start the program, so thank you.
I was sitting one day on my deck thinking about how lucky I was. The kids were a little older now, so I had some time for myself. I had a great job with Habitat for Humanity, and I liked what I was doing. And my husband and kids, we were all getting ready to go on a vacation. It had been a long winter in Columbus, Ohio, and we couldn't wait to get out. I reluctantly went back inside because I had grant due. I was in the middle of clicking away on my computer when the phone rang. "Are you Herman Weiler's daughter?" "Well, yes, I am." "This is his bank and the police. Do you know that your father has been sending cashier's checks to Canada?" My dad had been told he'd won the Canadian lottery, and all he had to do was send that money to Canada. Overnight, I was my parents' caregiver. It always seems to come as a crisis. Every now and then we have this role reversal. We have to put on this new hat that we're totally unprepared for. I don't know about you guys, but when I was pregnant, I had a stack of books this high on my bedstand, knowing everything there was to know about pregnancy, 2-year-olds, everything. When I turned into my parents' caregiver, I had not one book, not one resource, not one friend. I tell you this story because there's some universal themes in what I'm telling you. Number one, it came at an inopportune time. It never comes when you've got the time. I had a grant due. It impacted my whole family. We never went on that vacation. It impacted my job. It impacted my health. It impacted every part of my life. So I'm telling you this story so that maybe it's your story. If it isn't your story, better get ready for it to become your story. So here we are in the middle of what is kind of the time for us. You know, we finally have maybe a career that we're liking, we've got time to travel, and instead, in comes this whole idea of retirement and aging. We're stuck in the middle. There we are. As I said, it could be retirement, it could be that you've got a job, it could be you've got grandkids. And so there's either our kids or our grandkids. Half of us are paying to take care of our grandkids. Some of you probably even have what is called boomerang kids, where they're grown and they come back in and they're living in your basement. So we're still taking care of our kids. And then when we're least prepared, in comes our parents. We're not thinking about the fact that in our retirement, our new job could be taking care of mom and dad. The national statistic is that for people who are caring for mom and dad, they take 10% of their own income in order to take care of mom and dad. That means if you're making a financial plan or if you're thinking about your retirement, you better figure not only on those doggone kids, but on taking care of mom and dad. So I show you my family because my family is typical. First of all, my daughter, and the greatest predictor of being able to stay in your home to age is having an in-town daughter. Okay? I ain't got that. Darby and her husband and her son live in Madison, Wisconsin. Around the corner from her lives her husband's parents. Who is my daughter going to be taken care of? Not going to be me. My son and his wife, they're Googlers. They work for Google out on the West Coast. They're not going to be taking care of me. So you know what I think? I think I should have had more kids. So you have kind of two crucial conversations that you ought to be having. This is one of them. Do you want your parents to move in with you? One of the thoughts is that maybe that's not the best decision. And if you are going to make that decision, at the very least, make out a contract, both for them and for you. What are your expectations? What are their expectations? And what is the line in the sand that if that happens, that they're going to move somewhere else, that you're no longer able to take care of them? So you need to have an open discussion about how this is going to work. The other question is, who's going to take care of you? Like I said, I should have had more kids because my kids aren't taking care of me. So what I'd like to do is get everybody out of this crisis situation. We wait till mom falls and you get a phone call that she's in the ER. We wait for the crucial conversation. I'd like to tell you that a scam, like my dad did, is not very common, but that'd be a lie. It could be a scam. It could be any kind of crucial crisis that comes about. And we're standing there at the bedside and we never talked about what mom or dad want. Never talked with our siblings, never talked with mom and dad, and now the doctor's saying to you, what do you want done? So we need to have those crucial conversations sooner than later. I spent a long time making this particular PowerPoint because I think people that are in the middle of caregiving really do not have an idea of just how long it is. How many years. You could be taking care of mom and dad as long as you've taken care of your kids. So you need to get prepared for this. So when I thought of these 5 phases, I thought about, okay, about how long are each one of these? So first is the realization. Just one thing after another is kind of dropping off the table. Maybe mom and dad aren't keeping their appointments anymore. Maybe they can't lay out their meds. And you're seeing little things, but it's okay. We're all in denial. They're still okay. We don't have to plan ahead. Not so. That could be 10 years maybe. And then comes the crisis. Whatever it is, we're going to wait for that crisis. We've got to get out of that mode. And then this is what we really don't talk very much about. Those long years in between. You know, first it's they can't take their meds. And the next thing is they can't moan. The next thing is they're not eating well. The next thing is they're not socializing anymore. And it just gets to be this long time. And when you're in the middle of caregiving, sometimes you don't even notice it. It comes so gradual. Have you guys ever heard about the story about putting a frog in a pot? If you put a frog in a pot and just gradually put up the heat, it'll just stay in there until it boils and they die. If you put a frog in a pot that's already boiling, it'll jump out of it. But we caregivers, we're just not used to the fact that, oh, if I really stopped and looked at mom and dad, how much have they changed over the years? So this could be 10, 15 years. Then end of life. We just don't talk about that as being part of caregiving, but it truly is part of caregiving. How do we say goodbye? Where do you want to say goodbye? When do you want to say goodbye? What is that like, that end of life? And we have to prepare for that as much as we prepare for everything else. And then mourning. When I was doing research at Case Western Reserve Med School, Kubler-Ross's book, which is still the handbook, even though it's decades old, about the stages of grief. And she said it takes about 3 years to go through mourning. You know what I think? I think it takes as long as it takes. So if you're looking at these 5 stages, 10, 20 years, this is a whole new part of your life that's going on. I think dementia is always revving up, but it's revving up now to the point that there's some statistics that are just overwhelming. For instance, if you are a woman over 60 years of age, you have a greater chance of getting Alzheimer's than breast cancer. How many of you know somebody that has survived breast cancer? How many of you know somebody that survived Alzheimer's? It hasn't happened. We've got to figure out how to take care of this. Alzheimer's on its own will bankrupt Medicare. So my hope is it's just over the bridge. So when I did my PBS TV special, I did the special, which was kind of this plus a whole bunch more. But then, you know how PBS is. If you give $20, you get this. If you give $50, you get that. Well, so one of the things they wanted me to do was find 3 people that were outstanding in my field internationally and see if they could be interviewed. So one of the people we're very fortunate we have in Columbus is Dr. Cherie. He's at Ohio State and he's really internationally known for dementia. And so when I was getting ready to interview him for the TV program, I asked him if there was just one thing that he wanted to make certain he got across to this audience, that I wanted to tee it up for him. You know, what is it you want to make certain everybody has? And he said, if there's nothing else that we get across in this interview, I want you to get across that people should get a good diagnosis. Now that means that maybe your GP isn't the person. Maybe it means that you want to go to a specialist. But there are over 65 different kinds of illnesses that we call dementia. Alzheimer's being one of those things. But there's so many others. And then there's so many things that look like dementia. Everything from an infection, like for older females, UTIs. Something as simple as a urinary tract infection. When it isn't taken care of, it can start to look like the person's confused. It can start to look like dementia. The person who's in mourning can look like they've got dementia. B12, nutrition, all kinds of things that are easily taken care of. Plus, there's many other diagnoses that look and are part of dementias that actually have some kind of interaction that you can take care of. So make certain that you just don't jump to thinking, oh, mom's got dementia. Or, in my case, some days I'm thinking, I've got dementia. So I have this new definition. When I put my car keys in the refrigerator, I'm just distracted. When I don't remember what my car keys are for, then Dr. Bob better get me to a doctor. This is the dirty truth nobody tells you about. Even good families become dysfunctional in the middle of caregiving. First of all, the fact is in the United States that about 85% of the hands-on care is done by family caregivers. So you're drowning, you're trying to keep all the plates in the air, you're going to work, then your son says, oh, but you gotta get me to baseball, and your husband wants to be fed, and you're just trying to keep all the plates in the air. But then maybe even your family members aren't all on the same page. Only 10% of family caregivers say that they feel like the burden is equally distributed. That means that there's a lot of people that think they are doing so much more than the rest of the family. So thinking about families and the kinds of impact that it has on the whole family, we need to get ahead of the game so this doesn't happen to all of our families, so they don't all fall apart at the bedside, where they're not all arguing about what mom and dad want, or they're not thinking that everybody's helping out and taking care of everybody. So we have to have those crucial conversations early. I have a professional friend that sometimes when I share a stage across the country, she lives in Connecticut and she's a PhD, Francine Russo, and she wrote a book and it's about this thick, and the title of it is, "And They're Your Parents Too." It's just a book about what happens to siblings in the middle of caregiving and the fact that the burden is not evenly distributed. So some of the things that go on in the middle of caregiving, some of these emotions, you're going to feel all of these things. I actually put the word angry up there because as I'm speaking across the country, good boys and girls don't get angry at mom and dad. That's a bunch of crap. So I talk about getting angry is just part of it. Why is this happening? Why is my life falling apart? Why are my siblings not talking to me anymore? So all these emotions become part of caregiving. I was recently in San Diego, and one of the people in the audience came up afterwards and talked to me, and she said, "You know what? My divorce was not as hard and difficult as taking care of my mom and dad." So all the conflicts that go on, those of you that are in the middle of this can look at these and go, "Oh yeah, yeah." So just yell out, what do you think of the ones I have listed up there? What do you think is the number one conflict in families? Just yell out.
Driving, moving.
You know what? All of those, however, the line in the sand seems to be driving. When I talk to people about it's time for mom and dad, you rode with them and they went to make a left-hand turn on, and all of a sudden they're over here, or they can't remember how to get back from being home, and you know that it's time, we've got to have the conversation about driving. It is very, very difficult. So as we're talking about these conflicts and emotions that go on, how many of you are only children? Raise your hands. Oh, sometimes I have nobody. You know what? You only children are sitting there thinking, boy, if I only had a brother and sister to help me out. Okay, and you talk to the person next to you and they'll go, if I were only an only child. Yeah, so I didn't have to, talk to my sister on the West Coast. She flies in once a week and tells me what I'm doing wrong. Or she never helps on anything. So I'm thinking, I'm not certain if one is better than the other. One of the things that happens as we flops are in that water is that we just don't stop to see what's going on with mom and dad. Maybe we're so busy doing their grocery shopping or laundry or whatever it is that we don't stop and look at these. I think if I had had a list like what I'm going to share with you, I would have noticed that something was not right with mom and dad. And I think also we have the right, out of love and for their safety, to open that top drawer, pull out that checkbook, and just see what foreign country they're writing checks to. I think it's good to open the refrigerator to see what's in the back. See how many green things. Of course, if you came to my house, it could be bad too. But, I think we have the right, because we're doing it for all the right reasons, to go ahead and kind of look at stuff, see what's going on with mom and dad. Financial is one of the scariest things, and now I think with all the internet and the fact that many things are online, and if you don't keep checking, financial is one of the first things that fall off the plate. It's because it's a higher order thinking skill, And so look at their finances, see what's going on. And if things aren't good, set up a system within the bank that you either take over everything or you co-sign. Figure out some way to keep an eye on what's going on. I did not do that. Personal care. You know, when you're just living by yourself or with your husband, no sense in taking a shower. No sense in brushing your teeth or combing your hair. So that's one of the things that you want to look at. How's the personal care going? Transportation, we're getting more and more options with that. Not only are local resources having transportation, but when you think about Uber, when you think about the fact that now you can get your groceries delivered, and next thing you're going to have somebody come in on a senior moment. Drone. Come in on a drone. Sooner or later, it's going to be easier to grow old by yourself. But boy, it sure isn't any fun. Health. How's their health doing? Can they set up appointments? Can they keep the appointments? Can they take their meds? Again, look at what's going on. Look at their calendar. See, have they missed something? Household chores. My mom used to be able to see a dust bunny 30 yards away. And now her house was a mess. Her clothes weren't getting cleaned. So as I said, medication, are they, oops. I've got to get this back. So medication, doctors, appointments. As I said, one of the things you really need to look at is that memory part. Make certain you get a good doctor, somebody that really knows how to ask the right questions and look at what's going on. And then the other part we talk about is the idea of emotional status. How are they doing? Are they still socializing? Are they still cooking? Are they still, if you ask them, what'd you do today for fun? Are those things dropping off? One of the things that has become a hot issue in my field is isolation. They are now tagging isolation as in fact a chronic illness. People that are alone all the time. When you think about it, wouldn't it be fun to cook? Wouldn't it be something like taking a shower was necessary? Thinking about verbalizing or getting hugs or having interaction. So that's become one of the things that we really look at these days. The financial impact is a big problem. Big problem not only for them, because as you know, aging isn't cheap. And to age well really isn't cheap. But one of the things we have to think about as adult children is, should we drop out of the workforce? Should we move to where mom and dad are? Those kinds of questions sound really good. You know, like you're being a good daughter by moving. But you know how much you can lose? You can lose up to $600,000 of your own retirement because you're losing benefits, you're losing Social Security, or you're losing income. So don't take that so lightly that, sure, that's what I'll do. Sometimes maybe it's better to have mom and dad move to some kind of a retirement community, some kind of place where they're getting care all the time and you don't have to leave your job. Particularly good for people that are long distance. Figure out a good plan about how you can still stay in your workforce. Many people are saying they think they can't retire anymore, having nothing to do with taking care of mom and dad, just because of the economics. So if you retire early, it'll economically impact you greatly. Many people also completely misunderstand Medicare. How many of you think that Medicare pays for long-term care? Boy, is this a smart group. You guys are so smart. You know that most people in the United States see that as their retirement program. It isn't your retirement program. Don't count on it. 30% of us have to support mom and dad. Boomers are outliving their nest eggs, so we have to just think about our own retirement, let alone mom and dad. And that more elderly are moving in with mom and dad. I recently ask an audience about how many of them were thinking about having mom and dad move in with them, not one hand went up in the whole audience. Other impacts, disrupted relationships. Many marriages suffer a lot when one of them is a caregiver. You can imagine that that's true. You're not there as much, you're distracted. Other relationships that get disrupted would be just, you don't go to book club anymore. You don't have time to go out. You're not taking a walk. You're not having those relationships that you probably need the most when you're in the middle of caregiving. So disrupted relationships and disrupted marriages. Increased health problems. There's been all kinds of studies that show what caregiving does, but we're kind of fortunate. A husband and wife at the Ohio State University Medical Center, the Glaciers, have done the best longitudinal study on what happens to people in the middle of caregiving. And they found that the caregiver truly loses 3 years of their lifespan. And those of you that are in the middle of caregiving have to go, yeah, I see how that happens. And if you've got an elderly couple taking care of each other, and if the one has Alzheimer's, the chance is that that caregiver is going to die even before the Alzheimer's patient. So when you're talking about elderly spouses, we have to really keep an eye on them, because if it's making us feel like we're drowning, it's really difficult on the elderly spouses. Burnout, anxiety, sleeplessness, lack of concentration. I think it was JetBlue, and it could be years now, I just remember the story, that there was a male attendant on JetBlue that jumped out of the exit, the slide, and took, I think, a thing of beer with it, and then just walked off the job. Well, everybody was talking about how could an employee do this, and why in the heck did he do it? The backstory was that he'd been taking care of his mom who had Alzheimer's. And he was just ready to say, quit, stop the Ferris wheel, I want to get off. So, I wish I could write a script for everybody that's a caregiver in here. When we get on airplanes, and I remember the first time I ever heard that airline talk was when the stewardess or steward got up in front and said, put on your oxygen mask first and then put on your oxygen mask of others around you. I remember hearing that and it didn't even compute. I'm like, why? I don't understand that. Because if my little boy was sitting next to me or my fragile mom, of course my first reaction would be to take that oxygen mask and put it on her face. It's the wrong thing. On an airplane, if you can't breathe, you can't help people around you. It's the same thing with caregiving. I want to give every one of you the right tomorrow and the day after to take an hour and just do something for yourself. If it's just taking a walk outside, if it's going out to dinner, whatever it is, reading a book, you've got to take care of yourself. And it isn't selfish. Instead, it's self-worth that you're doing and healthy. Got to think of yourself first. So some of the cures, though, and there are some, is to set boundaries. Say to your siblings, say to your parents, this is how much I can do. I can do this, but I can't do that. Who's going to step up to the bat and do those things I can't? This is all I can do. And again, that's self-preservation. And also, it's good for you to say, recognize yourself. This is all that I can do. Delegate. We have a really hard time as caregivers delegating because we think we're the only people that can really do it well, right? That we're the only people that know how to take mom to the doctor. There's a point at which you need to delegate away. First of all, so the rest of the family sees what's going on, and also your self-preservation. Hire or ask for help. So my parents had a pretty big house, and so I would go after work, and I would go mow their lawn. So after a while, I thought, you know, this is ridiculous, Barbara. You should only do the things that only you can do. And get rid of everything else. Delegate it, hire it away, but don't do it. Only do the things that only you can do. So I decided I'd hire the boy next door to mow my parents' lawn. What do you think happened? They fired him. You know why? Because he could not put those strips in as straight as Barbara. So then I decided, why was I cleaning their house? So I hired a cleaning lady. What'd they do? Only Barbara can clean their house that well. You know what I decided after the fact? I did it all wrong. I didn't include them in the decision making. And the other thing is, I think they thought if I wasn't there doing all that stuff, that maybe I wouldn't be there. Instead, I should have said, this is freeing me up, Mom, so that I can just be with you. I can sit and talk with you. I can sit and listen with you. Because when I come into the house and I've got all that stuff to do, I'm never with you. So I just didn't do it right. You gotta take care of yourself. Join a support group. You know what's kind of interesting? I'm not really big on going to a support group because it takes a hunk out of my time. And I gotta take a shower, put on some makeup. You know, I'm not going to a support group looking crappy. So sometimes I'm like, support group. You know what? There are so many support groups online these days. So many blogs, so many other ways to communicate with people that are in the same situation you are. So if you like face-to-face, and I do sometimes, go join a group. Maybe it's through church or something where you can talk to other people. The other thing that's kind of smart is if you can find some friend of yours who's a stage or two ahead of you, that can kind of act as a mentor and say, okay, boy, I've been here. Here's 5 pitfalls that I suggest you take care of. There are documents, and depending upon who my audience is, I stress this more or less. I'm certain you know what all these are. The living will, healthcare, DNR. One of the things you need to know about artificial respirations is that once those external are started, you really can't stop them. And if the person is very old, very fragile, that sometimes what happens in the middle of that is more tragic than what it would be if you didn't even start it. So just know the pros and cons. Will Mom be equal to or better if we do this? And if they can't tell you that, then your decision making is completely different. Healthcare POA, so somebody has to take over and be in charge if Mom and Dad are incapacitated and can't. I've had all of these things for years, even when we were much younger, knowing that you never know what's going to happen. My son, who's in San Francisco, I've had him have those forever because he jumps out of perfectly functioning airplanes. So I think that what I'm talking about, I think is for 3 generations. If your kids don't have these, then you better make certain that they've got them. HIPAA forms means that the doctor has the right to tell you about your mom and dad's problems. I was telling you about waiting for a crisis is not a good choice. So Bob Hope was in the hospital and he was dying. And his kids were all around him and they were saying, Papa, Papa, we love you so much. You've just been the best Papa ever. And then one of them said, Papa, tell me what you want done at the end of life. And Bob Hope hesitated for a moment and he said, surprise me. That's funny, but for most families that doesn't work. Legal documents, last will and testament. Well, I'm not going to ask you, but in your head decide if you'd raise your hand or not. If you have a will, only 30% of the people in the United States have a will. I find that astounding. You want the government or somebody else to decide where your hard-earned money or your treasures have gone, your possessions? If you don't have a will, do get it. The other thing about a lot of these, both the medical and legal, is if you change states, or if your life circumstances have changed, or as you know, they keep changing these DNRs and some of these all the time, make certain you constantly keep updating all of these. Trusts, for some people, that's something you want to think about. Financial power of attorney is kind of like the healthcare one. If you're in the hospital and you're unable to write the checks and take care of all your finances, make certain you have designated some trusted person to do that. I think that we're asking the wrong questions because we as adult children don't want to interfere in their privacy, and we know how close to the chest they are already with everything, but we're asking the wrong questions. We say to our parents, do you have a will? And they go, yeah. We never say, let's pull it out and see. When did you last have this taken care of? We don't say with a trust, Mom and Dad, do you have trusts? And Mom and Dad go, yeah. They die, and you find out they never titled anything into the trust. So as we're going to see our financial advisors, as we're redoing things, take them along and say, come with me, let's just kind of look at your stuff. Or let's make certain it all falls and flows together well. But you've got to decide that their privacy needs sometimes to be invaded. So you need to build a team. This is not a sprint, it's a marathon, and you need a team. So a geriatric care manager, particularly if you're long distance, that's kind of like the quarterback or coach, kind of overseeing everything. They can oversee the medical things, they can go with a patient, they can bring in somebody to see if a house needs to have some remodeling done. They can take care of everything. In some, I've had people say, oh yeah, but they're hourly rate. What does it cost you to leave work to go do some of these things? Just figure out what's worth it. In-home care providers, when I first started this, there were not many choices. There are lots of choices now, particularly in an urban area like we live in. Build a team of legal, medical, and financial. And if you get a chance, you go meet their people. And have your kids come meet your people so that they know each other. Local resources, we've got a great one right here, sitting at the front of the room. Stop and talk to her. We also need to say to our parents and friends and neighbors, here's my business card. If you see something going on at Mom and Dad's house, I'm giving you the permission to please call me. Most people want to do that, but they're afraid to if you don't invite them in. Like, I went to visit my parents and the mailbox was like this. And I said, Mom, what happened to the mailbox? And she said, the wind. Yeah, but the scrape on the side of the car, yeah. But I could have had a neighbor call me and tell me that was going on. So build a team. Senior home remodelers, again, there's a plethora of new businesses that are popping up that we never even heard of before. There's family mediators, there's different people that will do remodeling, there's all kinds of things. You know why? Because this is a tsunami that is growing older. And they're just making a really smart business plan. So over the next couple of years, there's going to be even more of these available. Senior move. But let's talk a second about housing options. And I can really only tell you my parents' story. There are lots of different options as you can. One would be aging in place. One would be independent living, assisted living, rehab, all the kind of dementia, all the different kinds of things. But there's also this one umbrella that's called a CCRC, Continuing Care Retirement Community, in which all of those are available on the same campus. So my parents' story is that they moved into independent living in a CCRC. First of all, because my dad sent the money to Canada, that was the crisis that made them decide that they needed to move. So some crisis might be a gift, you just don't realize it. Or if they go into the hospital, get your medical professional person to say, you know, you really shouldn't go back home. take advantage of every crisis to make that change that they've been unwilling to do. So that was enough for them to precipitate going, and we ended up at a CCRC, which I thought for my parents was a really good choice, partly because they didn't age the same. Mom would fall, she'd go get a broken arm or whatever fixed, she'd go back to the nursing home part or the rehab part, and then go back in with Dad to independent living. Mom was a brittle diabetic. I used to go pull out those syringes. Now things are better, but a brittle diabetic parent is a tough thing to handle. And if their eyesight is going or their memory is going, and if you can't be there all the time, it's just one of many diagnoses that really need constant looking out after. So she'd stay with Dad, but if she had problems, they'd just pull the cord and a nurse would come over. So they kept bouncing back and forth in the hospital, there, then independent, and it just kept going back and forth. And it was very fluid, and Dad could go visit Mom and vice versa. The other thing I did that I thought, well, one of the things that are available, I guess I should say, is there's so many socializing things going on in a CCRC. You can hardly stay in your room all by yourself. But then, if they have to go eat, you know the older people will do anything for food. And if they paid for it, then they really will do it. So I had my parents check into the apartment that was the furthest away from the restaurant. I wanted to make certain that they had to walk and get some exercise every day. The other thing is, because they had to go somewhere, they took showers. They'd put on their pretty clothes. They'd combed their hair. Things that just were not happening at home. My dad, who would sit in front of the TV all day long and not move, joined the euchre club. Then they'd get on the van and go downtown to see a play. My parents had never gone downtown to see a play. So for my parents, it was a very good choice. So as I'm talking about how we adult children feel like we're the only people that can do things right, so one of the things I suggest is that we ought to have a little job jar or something, so that every time we think of something that we'd love to delegate away, we make a strip of paper and we put it in there, and if somebody says to you, oh, what can I do for you? I'm certain all of you go, oh, there's nothing. No, pull out the job jar. So my husband said to me one day, what can I do for you? And I didn't have my job jar yet. And I said, out of the clear blue sky, go grocery shopping. Okay, Bob McVicker had never been grocery shopping. So I'm trying to be a good wife. First of all, it's awesome that he asked me, and it's awesome that I told him to go grocery shopping. So I made out this list: broccoli, strawberries, apple. I just made it out. I made it really specific. I didn't just put vegetables. He comes home. He is so proud of himself. And I go to pull out the broccoli, and it's asparagus. He says, oh, they're trees. They all look alike. Strawberries were on sale. Oh, you guys. He brought a thing of strawberries like this. We had sores in our mouth from it. Bob is still doing the grocery shopping. And you know why? He stands and looks really pathetic in front of the fruits and the vegetables, and he always picks up some lady. Of course, she's over 80, but he always picks up somebody that wants to help him out. So my story to you is, we're talking about preparing for Mom and Dad, but the real story is, are you ready? Are you ready for your own situation? Are you ready to take care of Mom and Dad? So the story is, what do you need to do tonight or tomorrow in order to be ready for what's next? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Barbara. That was very educational. sponsors. So Claire, can you come up for a second and just give us your 30-minute rundown and also talk about your caregiver support groups?
I promise it'll be 30 seconds.
Did I say 30 minutes?
All right. Yeah, so as she said, I'm Claire, Source Point, and we have an entire program and an entire full-time staff person dedicated to caregiver support. What that program includes are our support groups. We do have 6 every single month throughout the county. 2 of them are at our main location there off Cheshire. We have them in Powell, Sunbury. We have some flyers in the back, that table closest to the piano back there, where you can check that out. We also have a Facebook forum, which is a closed Facebook group if you're on Facebook, so that she was talking a little bit about online support. So if you can't make it to our support groups, or you don't want to put makeup on, or whatever the reason may be, we do have that available. And even if your care receiver or your siblings that you might not see eye to eye with are on Facebook, they can't see it unless they're also in it. So that's a great thing that we have as well. Then we also do some educational classes. We have a course called Powerful Tools for Caregivers, which is a 6-week evidence-based program where you learn to take care of yourself. I actually wrote down a quote that Barbara said, "It impacted every part of my life." And that has everything to do with the lack of self-care, because we take on caring for somebody as if they have an acute illness. So I can drop everything until they get better. And in this case, we really need to treat it for what it is. It's a chronic illness, and we don't know how long it's going to last. So putting those things in place to take care of yourself is so important. So we talk about that. We have one-on-one consultations. Our caregiver program coordinator can talk to you anytime, in person at Source Point or on the phone. Her phone number is on a few of our flyers back there as well. Her name is Jessica. You need to get a hold of her. Call Source Point, ask for Jessica. And then finally, we do have Caregiver Concepts, which is our 1 hour, we call it our crash course in caregiving, and it's similar to some of the things you saw tonight, but just sort of how do you get ready? What are those lists of the things to prepare you in case there is a crisis? So instead of, oh shoot, what should I have had together before now? Let me get that together overnight, stay up all night, then we can go to the hospital in the morning and I'll have this together now. Just having it in a folder, in a binder, somewhere in your home so that you're ready for when those things come up. So she talks all about that. The next one is on November 20th at our South office off of Polaris, and I have a flyer about that as well in the back. So I'm going to be here after. If you have any questions at all, please come see me and please come up and see us. Thanks.
So Willow Brook briefly is a continuing care retirement community. Like Barbara mentioned, her parents had gone into. What does that mean? That's a word I still have a lot of trouble saying, so I'm kind of proud that I got out right there. It involves all levels of care, essentially. So we have independent living, where you're in your own apartment or twin single, and you're an active retiree. In some cases, though, we have quite a few people who are in their 90s and still independent and have support services like companion care that help them stay in their home. And that's our goal here, too, is to keep people as independent as possible for as long as you can. Then we have other services, like just say you're a caregiver and your spouse or your mother needs to get out during the day. Well, we have an adult day center, and I'm going to ask Sally to stand up. Sally Gallant runs our adult day center over at Willow Brook Christian Village, and she'd be happy to talk to anybody about that. It's a wonderful program, just daytime hours, but it gives the caregiver a break, and that's so important. After that, we have various levels. Transitional living is something, you live independently in your apartment, but there's an aide available for 12 hours a day to help your mom or dad with medication management or reminders that they need to do certain things, but they still have their total beautiful apartment, and they haven't had to downsize considerably and give you a lot of extra, make them less stressed because they're moving from independent to possibly later on assisted. There's a transition right in there. So assisted living, again, you have your own room, but you have access 24/7 to health care, personal services. So let's just say your mom is having trouble getting dressed every day, isn't eating right. They make sure she gets dressed in the morning, gets her meals 3 times a day, and medication is brought to them. It's a little bit more intense than the transitional. After that, we have the nursing home, so if they need more intense physical or mental therapy, we have the nursing home or the memory care, which is for Alzheimer's. And that's pretty much our services, but I did want to ask, I'm going to call them out individually, and then they will be at the table where all the brochures are near the piano. If you want to go up and talk to anybody, feel free to tell them your story. And I'll start with John Rogowski here, does independent living, and so does Marie McCreary over there. So they will be at that table. We have Heidi Reed, who's in charge of assisted living at Delaware Run, where we are now, and Susie Fleek, who is in charge of assisted living at Delaware Christian Village. Sally again, jump on up one more time. Sally does the adult daycare. And see if I forgot anyone. Dana Slingloff is our chaplain. Can you stand up, Dana? So we do have a chaplain here. He does a wonderful job running Bible studies and giving spiritual support. So all of those people will be in the vicinity. If you want to have a question, just grab them. And Barbara will be over here selling her books and answering any questions you may have. So thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you later. Bye-bye.